So this call was prompted by a newsletter that we've been sending out. We send out the newsletter more actively because our volume has just like significantly increased, and we want the world to see what's going on, which is exciting. And in particular, Mark was interested and posted in the Telegram chat about this little small blurb we had around the potential for like impact verification pools, high integrity impact verification pools. And it uses DAO technology that we currently have in hand. And I wouldn't say it's easy to use, but I would say that if we can develop a handful of proofs of concept about what it can do, I think it would make big waves. And I think that the larger philanthropy and impact investing sector would be seriously interested in what this is. And so I'm going to try to describe what that is now, and then we can get into some questions and project-specific conversations. So I was debating whether to draw it. I think I'm just going to use my words, and then if I need to, I'll sketch on the paper if I need to. So over the arc of the time at Regen, we've been developing eco credits as the sort of main feature that is the sort of vessel or the mechanism by which regenerative financing flows towards Earth stewardship projects. And there's inevitably the question of who buys those and how are the buyers integrated into the process earlier, and how is it not purely transactional, like just an offset or greenwashing, but actually relational. And within that, a lot of questions around Regen's unique approach, which is that we try to define the composition and the terms of an eco credit from the grassroots level, meaning communities practice governance to decide what should be in an eco credit rather than it being imposed. And if we can succeed in doing that grassroots definition of value and bundle that into an eco credit, then we think some of the core exploitative tendencies of climate financial markets and carbon credits can be really transformed, because it's not basically mining, it's not at the expense of local communities, but fundamentally for them. So that presents a really complex and interesting challenge around plugging into existing governance practices, storytelling traditions, rituals, and things like that around how communities form coherence around their environment and their stewardship of it, and how that might make a credit, etc. And we've been talking about that in the form of DAOs. And so most of the folks here were part of the CS DAO first cohort, where we were just trying to socialize what like sense make it all, like what Regen was trying to do amongst a more diverse set of stakeholders who have expertise in their particular context. So we now are playing with this DAO tool called DAO, which I think is a bad name, but it's like it's a platform that allows people to create DAOs, which are effectively like cooperatives that co-own and govern resources together by basically like drag and drop, like no coding is required. So you can create a group and you can put currency into that group. You can create like unique artifacts in the form of NFTs into that group. And then the group, you can submit proposals and you can say, here's what the proposal is. And if it goes through, here's what we want to happen. We want to pay this person. We want to create a new member. And so it's like a group chat that has a bank account attached to it. And before this existed, everything was basically command line interface based. So like the terminal in your computer, and that is not going to scale. We think DAO is closer to that, but it's also got quite a few hiccups. So I initially like talked about the idea that of eco credits, and I'm gonna like make a spectrum of regenerative economic stuff. I'm actually gonna draw it because I have to draw everything. Okay, here's the spectrum. It's a line, right? And on one far side, we have this clearly like formalized unit of value called an eco credit. And you could think of it like an asset or an RWA, a real world asset. It's something that a company might keep in their portfolio as proof of ecosystem regeneration, and it functions like a real world asset. Okay, eco credits are they're like financial instruments, and they're complicated to produce, and everyone on this call can attest to that, Howard in particular. Okay, then there's there's another version of that, which would be like, I'm going to call this IC, which stands for impact certificates, which means maybe it's also an NFT. So people plant 100 trees and they prove that they can plant 100 trees and they get an impact certificate, or they get an NFT that says like an NF tree. Or you might say, we're certified like organic. So certification schemes that say, okay, you followed these practices, therefore you have a certification. It's not really a credit in the same sense that it's not like a discrete asset that would be held in a portfolio, but it's like, we're certified. This product is certified. Radisson cotton is certified, organic, etc. And so if you know like EcoNavi, or if you've met Chata Fisha, the guys from Tanzania, they're in this territory. They're not using eco credits. They're using like NFTs on the blockchain as like certification systems. It's more informal, and you kind of, like they could be almost anything. I mean, NFTs are basically like JPEGs. So the JPEG is claiming to have other value, like attributes to it, like in just the same way that like an organic sticker on produce is more than just the ink, it's saying there's a whole thing behind it. Okay. And then this last one, which is the focus of what we want to talk about, is called CP, which stands for compensation pools. And it's the most informal of them all. And no one is currently playing with this right now. And we think that this is a really potentially simple version around regenerative financing that people could test in the field. And so what a certification pool is, like we'll call that like it comes in other names, like a retroactive compensation pool or an impact verification pool. And you could think of it this way: rather than doing work and creating a credit and then trying to take that credit to a market or the certification to a market and sell it that way, imagine there's a pool that's like a fund. And you could say that fund is actually held by the land itself if it's an ecological institution, as per that essay, which makes it pretty fun. Or it could just be like a fund that's sitting there. And say I'm an impact investor or a philanthropist, and I'm tired of all of the like kind of corruption and opacity that's playing out with where my funding goes. So a lot of people have this frustration that they can't verify that where the resources are being placed are having the impact that was desired. And compensation pools, impact verification pools, are meant to be a really simple mechanism that tries to address that part of it. So we're not going to create credits or create certificates. The pool, say, has $1,000 in it, for example. And say you have a community of people who are waste pickers in Tanzania. This is an example that we're actively trying to collaborate and figure out what's the best way to work through. So there's cooperatives of waste pickers in Tanzania who are picking up plastic from landfills and from the street. Like, it's clearly helping the world. Removing plastic from the ocean and from industrial waste streams is a helpful thing. So what a compensation pool is say I'm an investor and I want to put $5,000 into to invest in removing plastic from a city or from a beach or something like that. And I want the highest level of confidence possible that that's actually doing what it claims to do. So the idea is you put the money into a pool, and then on, like, say, a monthly basis, or you could even have it be triggered by some environmental condition, like if toxicity level drops before a certain level or something, that different members of the DAO who are a part of that fund, we'll call that fund now a DAO, say each one of those is like a waste picking group. And at the end of the month, they weigh the amount of plastic that's been collected. They also take a picture of it. They also like try to sort what the types are. So they create attributes around what their impact is: an image, a weight measurement, a category of types, and they submit that to the pool. And then everyone who submitted goes through and rates everybody else's contribution, meaning like, do you believe that they actually did what they said that they did? Do you trust it? And you're basically putting a stamp of trust on each other's contributions. And then once that's over, the money from the fund automatically gets dispersed to the different community members based off of their contribution. And what's cool about it is that it's completely disintermediated, meaning the fund just disperses the resources based off of people's impact, and not from what they've contributed, but from what other people have, what their peers have verified them to have. And it doesn't require a third-party expert to come in and say, I know best what happened, here's what happened. There's a kind of incentive space where peers are incentivized to be honest because they're competing for the same resources in a way. Like you wouldn't grossly exaggerate somebody else's contribution because that might undermine what you would get out of the pool too. So it doesn't do like credits like as assets that might follow like price discovery and things like that. It's more like a pool that you're damn confident is going to the work. It's supporting directly the people who are doing the work. And so we think that's an interesting, there's no credits being issued. There's no certification. People are submitting their work and the fund is dispersing resources according to how people rank themselves and how their peers verify their contributions. That's an impact verification pool. So I'm going to stop there. Here's a question, and this is a really good question. But yeah, let's pause there. Howard's asking, so what is the funding source for the pool? This is an excellent question. So in effect, it's like it doesn't get past the same challenges that like certification or credits have. Like who is going to fund regenerative action is still a question. But the goal is that this allows people to invest in regenerative action with the highest degree of confidence possible that their actions, that their contributions are directly supporting regenerative action. So we haven't solved like who's going to pay for it. But say in the case of, I'm working with a group called Fundación Futuro in Ecuador. They're a consortium of multinational corporations that are, they do philanthropy as part of their corporate ESG commitments. And so they all have this. And there's this ripe problem where they have really no idea if the money that they're putting into actions actually is doing anything or not. So the kind of traditional philanthropy sector, et cetera, I think is like a clear example of this. Less so people who are trying to buy buy credits, but people who are trying to do, they're trying to basically donate their resources with the highest level of confidence that it has the impact that it's intended to have. That's the best answer I can give right now. So Tamara's asking, and the funding happens retroactively, or is the attribute of impact, e.g. a picture like a bonus payment? It happens retroactively. Yeah. So that produces limitations. Like you would, in theory, have to, overhead costs are significant. Monitoring in the form of credits and certification schemes and verification is like the most expensive part of the credit issuance process. So we think of this as like a kind of humble, scrappy version of that. So so with say Chata Fisher, we're going to put $1,000 into this pool in different installments. We're going to do it in $100 installments, and then every 2 weeks we're going to have waste pickers like they're already collecting. Yeah. We're going to have them collect, and then this will disperse according to what they collect. So it is retroactive, and it doesn't get past the overhead costs of implementation. So our goal is to say it's not like solving. It's not solving anything other than like a high degree of confidence in a more or less simple interface for like that the impacts are actually happening and are verifiable. Nana had a question. Yeah, go for it. Somebody else talk. I've been talking a lot.
No, don't have a question. I just wanted to add that basically understanding eco-credit impact certificates and retroactive compensation pools on a spectrum of formalism and informalism is really helpful, because till now eco-credits cater to more formalized projects with big landscape and foundation or an organization already working on it, and wealth of resources and time and human power that can be invested into actually doing this. Whereas I think retroactive compensation pools could be more fitting for like community actions that can happen quicker and faster, rather than waiting for 3 years for a carbon or a bio credit to come out eventually in the future.
Exactly.
So
Like a weekend
yeah.
prototype cycle versus years. That's part of the goal.
Yeah, so these are like best fitted for smallholder farmer groups or smallholder community organizations that want to take local action, and yeah, can incentivize people for positive actions.
I think these kinds of things, these kinds of systems are really important for the informal sector, in especially in developing countries like India, where they have absolutely no formal structure or support. And this is super, super important. And it's a conversation I'm having with another group right now. I see a lot of alignment with the way this thinking happens and the thinking that's happening there. So I would love to connect you guys up if and when you have the time, because I feel there could be maybe another potential project to explore in India for the informal sector. A lot of it is waste picking and garbage collection and all these other, the plastic and all these other things. The recycling sector in India, which is very informal. We don't have a very formal sector for it. So
Right, but it's a
One way,
huge sector.
yeah,
it's
it's a
huge. But collectivizing action at the local level would really help, at the community level or at the village level or at the district level, collectivizing that action so that they have something to look forward to, I think would really, really help. So it's part of a livelihoods thing we are exploring.
Also connecting it back to Howard's question around where funds are coming from. I think this also gives us an opportunity to think beyond like big players that can fund this. For example, in context of India, we have a lot of these like sustainable communities and living societies coming up that has like basically residents of 300 to 400 families living together, and they could invest in the pool and put things together for a better waste segregation system that can be supported by local communities doing that. So I think this also allows us a bit more play area to think like how can communities fund regenerative work in their own area and not just be dependent on bigger grants and big organizations.
I think just in connection with the funding, no, Nana, what we are looking at is, because this is a very huge sector. Economies of scale play a very important part. So when we want the community to own something, even if we ask them to give 1 rupee a month, but then you have, say, 1 lakh of them giving 1 rupee a month, it creates a huge pool.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at it as, really tiny, really impactful, you kind of spread it out, but then you get the pool that is required for. Yeah.
I had wondered, Austin, whether the foundation could create alliances with other foundations to help fund these pools, and whether it could be underwritten, and maybe it could be through foundations that are tied to businesses that have ESG commitments, to create a pool that then could be directed to communities that set up the DAO or the organizational infrastructure to perhaps have some models and create an opportunity for communities to take what's being learned by the applications you've developed. I know it'd be a challenge for Regen to develop to raise the meaningful funds, but perhaps other foundations or business associations that are that are active in sustainability and have their own flow through foundation. So I'm thinking from a US perspective, and that may not be entirely appropriate, but if we get on the tax exempt side here, where these funds are post-tax and clearly regarded as philanthropic and virtuous in that way, we could perhaps accelerate it, because I think if we go somewhere saying get organized around this in a way where the governance and the participation is up to is meaningful, there's money if you do it, then this could be like wildfire.
Yeah. Mark, I see your hand is up. I'm gonna reply to that, and then I want to make sure you have a chance to talk. So where we are right now is we think that this mechanism could be kind of like wildfire, or it has potential to be simple and impactful. No one has tested this in a real world physical context yet. So upstream of like creating larger foundation, like NGO partnerships or corporate partnerships, or even upstream of the foundation being a fiscal sponsor. So basically an entity could donate to the foundation, and if it's, assuming it's in alignment with planetary regeneration, which is our mission statement, then it's a tax deductible donation, and we put it into the pool. So it's a charitable donation just like that, because we can fiscally sponsor it. We're at the level where just getting any test of this being tried out on the ground would be pivotal for the larger world to see. And so I'm going to broaden the idea generally to be like, it doesn't have to just be impact verification specifically. That's like a particular example of like a DAO governance approach. It could even just be a governance process on resource allocation. Say, yeah, there's $1,000. How do we want to disperse that $1,000 according to this community? Should it go towards repairing a water septic system? Should it go towards purchasing new livestock? Should it go towards blank? And communities just vote on what that is. And we can work together to make the interface for communities to vote on that as simple as possible. We are willing to put like $1,000 down, hundreds of dollars down to any one of your orgs if you think that you have an appropriate context to try it, just to see how it works, like just to test in an ethical and appropriate way, if that makes sense. So if this resonates, like $1,000 is nothing. It's a lot, but it's also nothing. So we have set aside resources to try to test this out and get good data around like, did this work or not? Retroactive compensation pools are one of them, but simple enough like governance around resource allocation for like real world examples. And it would use this tool DAO, and we can help. You can do it on your phone. You don't need a Web3 wallet to access it. I'm not saying it's like a great user experience. It's new, and that's kind of always been part of the deal here. But yeah, I want it with the time we have. I want like just the foundation has resources just to test this out. So if there's a scenario where there's like a waste collection situation, or people are doing tree planting or removing invasives, something where the verification of the system is simple, and people could just use taking phones or taking measurements and inputting the measurement. Like simple, like eco credits are complex articulations of human environmental relationships. So if we can find, like the reason we use the waste collection one is because kilograms of plastic is a pretty clear parameter. It's a clear single indicator around, is this helping or not? And if we did it, we could write a report, publish it or whatever, and be like, here's a new model for high transparency, durable, like peer-reviewed impact. And that's my invitation to you all. Think through your scenarios, your network, and if you have one that feels like it's a good application, then please talk to us. We're really excited about this. I've spoken a lot. So Mark, you go, and then Howard and anybody else.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Very exciting. So I just understood right now that the the tool is actually the DAO, and the concept you explained, and so that's a very great concept. And since Sana and me have been working on these two separate methodologies, the monitoring and the verification, third-party verification was an issue, exactly like a lot of the portion of the budget of the project would have gone through to this part of monitoring, but also third-party verification, which is not cheap. If you're looking at a certified agency like Control Union or EcoCert or whatever, you're looking at $5,000 to $10,000 just for that. And
that is the limiting reactant to every refi project, is the expense of verification, period. Refi in the blockchain-based project has failed to date, has not made a significant success because we haven't cracked verification. This is like a humble effort to try to like probe into that space. Sorry,
exactly. And so my question would be, yes, I'm thinking about this, exactly how to apply it. Could be ground truthing, taking pictures, as you say, and the farmers basically reporting on each other. Question would be then, how to this DAO tool. This is on the smartphone, or who is the monitor who will just input all the data? Can the farmers do it by themselves?
Yeah, pretty much. Like you can have it on your phone, you can have it on your computer. You even don't need to have a Web3 wallet to be able to do it. You can just sign in through your Google account, basically. But only when I think it comes to like receiving funds, you would need to connect to a wallet because it's currently operating on Web3 platforms. So this brings in another question of like, how do you do it? Yeah, and maybe you will need like some custodial services. Have you heard of them? Where people that are not fully comfortable using Web3 systems, you have like a custodial system that basically off-ramps this digital money and cashes and like distributes into like physical funds, fiat funds or something like that. So these like creative things have to be thought out depending on the group and like the technical literacy that we're working with. But the app itself, I think, is simple enough to use. The other limitation is it's only available in English, which is a problem for many communities, especially the informal sector, if they don't speak good enough English. So yeah, it definitely requires some training modules that we all need to invest some time and resources on. And we have it in mind to try and make it like more accessible. It's the best we have got, but it's still not perfect enough for every context application.
I'm unfortunately going to have to hop because I have another thing, but I welcome you all to continue. I just to do this screen share. This is from the plastic collection context that might be around like the user experience, the user interface is one of the biggest challenges we're swimming upstream against because it's designed for a different context or clientele. So imagine this. Do you have, can you see my cursor right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So Regen Foundation say we put resources into this retroactive compensation pool in DAO. We create a DAO and we call it a Smart Agro Fund. To have the individual farmers interact with DAO probably does not make sense for quite a few reasons. Maybe even the head of a farmer cooperative, maybe that doesn't make sense because it's still like not something that's particularly relevant. Maybe there's a cooperative of farmer cooperatives, or like at a couple ticks higher, there's a handful of individuals who seem like they're comfortable being able to log into a system and input information and hit submit. So it's like a gizmo. It's like an app on the phone, like other apps are on the phone. So we don't expect it to be, something that like, in theory, to make it the most direct line of like payment to the people doing the work. The ideal scenario is to have the farmers themselves be the ones doing this, but we understand that's not really practically feasible. But maybe one day it would be. So these members you have like a point of contact. Say there's 3 of them, 4 of them, 6 of them who are kind of the bridges, the group that's your focus group, and they're the ones who are they're doing the monitoring on behalf of the rest of the team and inputting that into the app, which then runs back into here. And this IV stands for impact verification. So we put the fund in, groups do their impact verification, and based off of the weights that are distributed from the peer guarantee system, the money goes back out the other side. That's the idea.
Perfect. Got it. This would work, definitely. We have
Cool.
some project developer, team monitors and team leaders who would be able to then start doing this work and educate the farmers at the same time so they can take over after a while. But we would have to, change the interface to Khmer language script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If there's a way that this could be tested with just like, we're even looking for a scenario where like, was this field planted or not? Yes or no? Like
Correct.
the
Yep.
most because we're trying to get, this is like completely cutting edge technology that's exclusively used for like degenerate financial speculation, but the mechanics are completely applicable towards like cooperative peer guarantee systems around contributions so that communities can govern their own funds without a verifier or a third party. So we encourage you all to think about like, do all the members agree that the ball is red? Yes or no? I mean, it's a stupid example, but it's literally just that simple to get through what are the hiccups in terms of implementing it, because there's going to be a ton of them. And we're very close friends with the people who are building this. So if we can say like, we want this custom functionality for Smart Agro in Cambodia or GVK in India, then they could build it and ship it and implement it so that we could have custom functionality built in for you all. Which is exciting.
Perfect.
I think DAO is a terrible title. It's not my company. I don't know. I don't know what to do there. We could just we have to work on that. I agree.
But I could set up a call in a week from now and to continue discussing this, because a lot of ideas and different ways in which we would want to collaborate on this together is coming up. And I think to keep the momentum on, could we meet at the same time in a week? Sorry to cut you off first.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I'll be out in the woods, but in 2 weeks I'm back.
We could do this.
That way people can like, you can talk with constituencies and stuff and think about it. And then it gets crazy because when that fund can legally be owned by the land itself. So the land is directly paying the stewards for that work. That's the ecological institution idea that Sana was playing with. So that's the trust is owned by the earth. And then now we're in this very exciting space. Okay, I love you all. This has been awesome. See you later.
See you later. Fantastic.
Are we going to regroup in 2 weeks then? Is that the
Yeah,
plan?
I think it could be nice to have Mark out of the woods and with us.
Don't wait for me.
I will...
Just go ahead and I'll join when I'm back. I mean, I don't want to be the holdup here.
I don't think it's a
2 weeks is a more realistic cadence.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Okay, bye.
All right.
Bye. We can let this simmer a bit and then take it forward. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, Sana, Suma, would love to hear you all's thoughts on like how this, it's like balancing where it's appropriate, where the technical overhead is complicated and frustrating, the potential is real. What is an appropriate use case which demonstrates the potential? And we're basically just working our way up to being like, well, how would we govern the composition of an eco credit now? Like it's the same process, but we're just trying to test it in more small sandboxes. Okay. Now
so Austin, in this setup, it's humans checking human work, right? You're not putting in an AI yet to
you could
take that over, but at the moment we try to make it as simple as possible.
It's peers reviewing
peer review. Yeah. Okay.
Where they have an incentive, to be honest, because they want each to just fairly get what their contributions were.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we can definitely think about this.
Cool. See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks everybody.